By the time Don Gullett turned 25, he had already won 91 Major League games. That was more than Warren Spahn had won at the same age, more than Whitey Ford, more than Sandy Koufax. 3 left-handers bound for the Hall of Fame, and all 3 had been well behind Gullett's pace. His manager, Sparky Anderson, believed he knew where that pace was leading. Anderson predicted that Gullett would someday enter the Hall of Fame himself. And why wouldn't he? Gullett had reached the majors at 19. He had pitched in 4 World Series, won 2 championships, and become one of the leading starters on the Big Red Machine. He was young, left-handed, battle-tested, and still getting better. At an age when many pitchers are only beginning to establish themselves, Don Gullett had already built the first half of a Cooperstown story. But there would be no second half. On July 9th, 1978, Gullett took the mound for the New York Yankees against the Milwaukee Brewers. He recorded 2 outs. Milwaukee collected 3 hits, drew 4 walks, and scored 4 earned runs. Gullett took the loss. It was the final Major League game he would ever pitch. He was 27 years old. The record he left behind was remarkably dense. 9 seasons, 109 victories, a 3.11 earned run average, 921 strikeouts, and 6 teams that reached the World Series. He had spent almost his entire adult life in baseball's brightest October light. Then, before most pitchers reached their prime, he was gone.
To understand how a career could travel so far and end so young, the story has to return to a place where Don Gullett's talent seemed almost too large for one sport. Lynn, Kentucky was home. Nearby South Shore was where he attended McKell High School. Long before Cincinnati or New York knew his name, Greenup County knew what it had. Gullett began pitching in the 8th grade, but baseball captured only part of your athletic ability. At McKell, he became an all-state player in baseball, football, and basketball during his senior year. The stories from those days sound exaggerated until the numbers are attached to them. In one high school baseball game, he pitched a perfect game and struck out 20 of the 21 batters he faced. Only 1 out was made by anyone else. In one football game, he scored 72 points. He ran for 11 touchdowns and kicked 6 extra points. Those performances explain something essential about the expectations that followed him. Gullett did not emerge as a specialist who needed years to discover what he could do. He arrived as the best athlete in sight, the kind of local figure whose accomplishments passed quickly from box scores into community memory. Greenup County would eventually place a monument to him on the courthouse lawn.
Its inscription needed only 4 words to explain the relationship between the player and the place. This is Don Gullett country. In 1969, the Cincinnati Reds selected him in the first round of the Major League Draft, 14th overall. He married his wife Kathy that same year. He also began his professional career with the Sioux Falls Packers of the Northern League. The transition lasted only 1 summer. When Gullett reported to spring training in 1970, Cincinnati was building a club ready to win immediately. The Reds were not looking years into the future. They were about to capture the National League pennant, and their 19-year-old first-round pick gave them a reason to accelerate his timetable. Gullett impressed the club enough to make the Major League roster. On April 10th, 1970, he arrived in San Francisco for his debut against the Giants. Candlestick Park was an unforgiving place for a teenager's first appearance. Its exposed concrete decks rose beside the bay, and the wind and cold became as much a part of the park's identity as the team playing there. In 1970, the hard artificial surface was new, another sharp feature in a stadium already known for testing everyone who entered it. Into that setting, came a left-hander listed at 6 feet and 190 pounds, barely 3 months past his 19th birthday. A year earlier, he had been pitching and playing 2 other sports at McKell High School. Now, Willie Mays and the San Francisco Giants were in the opposite dugout.
Gullett entered in relief of Ray Washburn. He worked an inning and a third, allowed 1 hit, walked 1, and struck out 2. No earned runs crossed the plate while he was on the mound. There was no long minor league apprenticeship to prepare him for this. Cincinnati had asked a teenager to help a contender, and his first appearance gave the Reds no reason to send him away. If your earliest baseball memories came from Cincinnati in 1970, the whole season may still carry the feeling of something arriving ahead of schedule. The Reds moved into Riverfront Stadium that summer, trading Crosley Field for a new circular home beside the Ohio River. The games came through AM radios and television sets as a young club raced toward October. And among the new names was a teenager from just down the river in Kentucky, already being trusted with major league innings. Gullett appeared in 44 games as a rookie. 42 came out of the bullpen, where a young pitcher could be summoned with runners on base, asked to protect a lead, or required to cover innings when a starter could not. He finished 5-2 with a 2.43 earned run average. That number meant more than a promising first season. An earned run average measures how many runs a pitcher allows across 9 innings, excluding those charged to defensive errors. Gullett's 2.43 showed that a pennant-winning club could hand meaningful innings to a 19-year-old and expect the game to remain under control. By October, Cincinnati needed exactly that. The Reds entered the 1970 World Series against the Baltimore Orioles with an injury-riddled pitching staff. Their lineup was beginning to reveal the power that would define the decade, but the pitching staff needed help wherever it could find it. Gullett and veteran reliever Clay Carroll helped keep Cincinnati competitive. The World Series stage was different from anything Gullett had experienced. Riverfront Stadium was only months old. Cincinnati's red seats wrapped around the artificial turf, the upper deck rising above a field built for a new era of multi-purpose parks. Baltimore brought a seasoned club that had reached the World Series for the 2nd consecutive year. And now the Reds were asking their teenage rookie to get outs against the American League champions. Across the series, Gullett pitched 6 2/3 innings. He allowed only 1 earned run, giving him a World Series ERA of 1.35. Cincinnati lost the championship to Baltimore, but Gullett had done more than survive his first October. With the Reds' pitching depth under strain, he had helped hold the series together. Think back to the first young player who made baseball feel new to you. Maybe his card came out of a wax pack. Maybe you first heard his name from an announcer leaning into the excitement of a pennant race. Part of the attachment came from knowing that his story was still unwritten. Every appearance suggested years of possibility ahead. That was Don Gullett in 1970. In the span of little more than a year, he had gone from McKell High School to professional baseball, from Sioux Falls to Cincinnati, and from a spring training opportunity to the World Series. The Reds had discovered that his youth did not prevent them from relying on him, but arriving quickly and lasting a long time are 2 different demands. Gullett had already shown that he could handle major league hitters and the pressure of October. What neither he nor Cincinnati could yet know was how often the next stage of his career would be shaped by the struggle to keep his body moving at the same extraordinary pace. The first proof came in 1971. As Gullett's role grew, his results held. He finished with a 16-6 record and a 2.65 earned run average, 6th best in the National League. His .727 winning percentage led the league. A pitcher's record can be influenced by the club around him, and Gullett was surrounded by a gifted Cincinnati team. But the ERA placed his work in clearer focus. He was preventing runs at one of the best rates in the league while making the transition from teenage reliever to major league starter. The path still looked almost unnaturally smooth. Then, in 1972, Gullett contracted hepatitis. The illness disrupted his season and gave him the only losing record of his 9-year career. For the first time, his progress was interrupted by something talent could not overpower.
The Reds returned to the World Series that October, but Gullett's season had already established a pattern that would become more important with time. His ability kept carrying him forward. His health kept making the journey less certain. There was also a strange historical marker during that difficult year. On August 6, 1972, Gullett surrendered the 660th home run of Hank Aaron's career. 1 year later, on August 17, 1973, Willie Mays hit his 660th and final Major League home run against him. The number connected two of baseball's defining sluggers, and Gullett happened to stand on the mound for both moments. Aaron was still climbing toward the game's career home run record. Mays was nearing the end. Gullett, barely into his 20s, was pitching at the point where one generation's history was being completed and another generation was taking over the game. By 1974, his own place in that new generation had become unmistakable. That July, Gullett went 6-1 with a 1.83 ERA and struck out 42 batters in 54 innings. He was named the National League Player of the Month. Over the full season, he struck out 183, eighth most in the league, and allowed fewer than 7.5 hits per 9 innings, fourth best in the National League. Those numbers described more than a good month inside a good year. Gullett had become difficult to hit, capable of missing bats and controlling long stretches of a season.
The promise attached to him in Kentucky was no longer being projected into some distant future. It was visible in major league games. And if you followed baseball in the mid-1970s, you know how a starting pitcher's presence could define the day. The lineups were printed in the afternoon paper. The radio told you who would be on the mound. A strong starter did not simply begin the game and hand it away after 5 innings. He was expected to stay in the picture, inning after inning, until the result belonged to him. Gullett was becoming that kind of pitcher, just as Cincinnati was becoming the team that would define the decade. The Big Red Machine is often remembered through its everyday lineup: Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, Tony Perez, Pete Rose, and the relentless pressure of an offense that offered no comfortable place to breathe. Their fame can make it seem as though the pitching merely had to stand nearby and accept the victories. Gullett's 1975 season tells a fuller story. He produced one of the strongest years of his career, and the measures that account for game situations placed him among the National League's most valuable pitchers. When the Reds reached the National League Championship Series against Pittsburgh, he delivered a performance that belonged entirely to him. The setting was Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati, its circular decks filled with postseason noise and its artificial turf giving every ball through the infield a sense of added speed.
The Pirates had won the National League East. Cincinnati had won 108 games, but none of those victories could carry into October. The Reds still had to prove that their magnificent regular season would end differently from the near misses that had come before it. Gullett took the mound and stayed there. A complete game in the postseason required him to manage every phase of the contest himself. There would be no early exit followed by a line of anonymous relievers. Pittsburgh's hitters would continue seeing the same left arm, and Gullett would continue answering for the score. Then he affected the game from the other side of the contest. At the plate, Gullett collected a single. Later, he hit a home run. By the end of the game, the pitcher had driven in 3 runs while completing all 9 innings on the mound.
The sound in Riverfront would have changed the instant the ball left a pitcher's bat with unexpected authority. Fans who had come ready to watch Cincinnati's celebrated hitters saw Gullett supply his own support. His uniform carried the dirt and repetition of a full night's work. Trips from the mound to the dugout, from the dugout to the batter's box, and back out again to protect what he had helped create. For those who remember National League Baseball before the designated hitter, this was part of its texture. A pitcher could not disappear when his place in the order arrived. Most of the time, expectations were modest.
Then came a night like this, when the man responsible for stopping the other team also became one of the reasons his own team pulled away. Gullett's complete game, single, home run, and 3 runs batted in compressed everything Cincinnati needed into one performance. On a team famous for its offense, he had controlled a postseason game from both directions. The Reds went on to win the World Series in 1975, their first championship since 1940. In 1976, they did it again. This time, they swept the New York Yankees. At 25, Gullett now had 91 career victories. Spawn had 8 at the same age. Ford had 43. Koufax had 53. Comparisons across careers are never guarantees, but they explain why Sparky Anderson could look at his young left-hander and see Cooperstown ahead. Gullett had already pitched for 4 Cincinnati pennant winners. He had already helped win 2 championships. The hepatitis season had interrupted him, but it had not changed the larger direction. His career still appeared to be expanding. Then baseball itself changed around him. After the 1976 season, Gullett became a free agent. His agent was Jerry Kapstein, an important figure in a new marketplace that allowed established players to negotiate for their services. On November 18, 1 month after the Reds completed their World Series sweep of New York, Gullett signed with the Yankees. The reported agreement was for 6 years and $2 million. The symbolism was immediate.
The reigning champions had lost a frontline pitcher, and the team they had just defeated had acquired him. Gullett was leaving the familiar machinery of Cincinnati for the greater scrutiny surrounding the Yankees. It should have marked the opening of the richest and most secure phase of his career. The contract extended far beyond the seasons he would actually be able to pitch. His 4th start for New York came on April 25, 1977, at Memorial Stadium in Baltimore. Rain had settled over the ballpark. The mound was wet, the footing uncertain. In the 4th inning, Gullett slipped and fell. The damage spread across more than one part of his body. He sprained his ankle and strained a muscle in his neck. The neck injury required a brace, and he missed starts. For a pitcher, the delivery depends on the body working as a connected sequence. The foot must find the ground, the legs must support the motion. The trunk and shoulder must carry force toward the plate. On that wet mound in Baltimore, the chain broke with one slip. The sight would have been alarming enough on its own. The Yankees' expensive new left-hander, down on a rain-darkened field, his first month with the club suddenly interrupted. The game moved on, but New York's expectations had to wait while the ankle and neck healed enough for him to return. This was no longer the controlled recovery of a long off-season. It was an injury arriving in public, on the mound, 4 starts into a major new contract.
Gullett's first Yankees season had barely begun, and already his availability had become part of the story. 12 days later, on May 7th, he was back. Against the Oakland Athletics, Gullett struck out 10 batters. He did not leave after 5 innings, or 6, or 7. He threw a complete game and finished with 154 pitches as New York won 11-2.
Picture what that workload meant in 1977. Each time the inning ended, Gullett returned to the dugout knowing that the game still belonged to him. Each time Oakland came back to bat, he climbed the mound again. 100 pitches came and went, then 120, then 140. The final total reached 154. The box score offered the reassuring version of the day: 10 strikeouts, a complete game, an easy Yankees victory. A pitcher who had recently worn a neck brace had demonstrated his readiness in the language baseball trusted most at the time. He had taken the ball and refused to give it up. Fans from that era may remember how little ceremony surrounded a high pitch count. There was no live graphic tracking every throw in the corner of the screen, no nightly debate built around a fixed limit. The starter remained on the mound, the number climbed quietly, and endurance became visible only through the innings he kept finishing. Gullett's return looked emphatic. Whatever concern Baltimore had created, this seemed to be the answer. He went 14-4 in 1977.
His .778 winning percentage was the best in the American League, just as his winning percentage had led the National League 6 years earlier. The Yankees returned to the World Series and won the championship. That gave Gullett 3 consecutive World Series victories on active rosters, 2 with Cincinnati and 1 with New York. Few players ever moved directly from one champion to another. Gullett had done it while winning 14 games in his first season with the new club. From the outside, the direction still looked intact. There had been another injury, another interruption, and another forceful return. But recovery had always been measured by what Gullett could do next: take another start, work another inning, carry another game. In 1978, his body finally presented a problem that could not be answered by returning to the mound and pitching through the afternoon. His shoulder was badly damaged. Gullett underwent surgery to repair a double tear of the rotator cuff. For a left-handed pitcher, the rotator cuff is central to the motion that creates every pitch. This was not an ankle that needed time, or a neck strain that could settle. The arm on which his career depended had suffered 2 tears in the shoulder. On July 9, 1978, against Milwaukee, Gullett made what became his final appearance. He worked 2/3 of an inning, allowing 3 hits, 4 walks, and 4 earned runs. That line belongs in the record, but it does not explain the pitcher he had been.
It records the point at which a damaged shoulder and a major league career finally met their limit. He never pitched in the majors again. The Yankees won another World Series in 1978, their second in a row, but Gullett was injured and left off the postseason roster. He remained under contract, and New York did not formally release him until after the 1980 season. The transaction arrived 2 years after his final pitch, a delayed piece of paperwork following an ending his shoulder had already imposed. He was 27 when he last appeared. That age is what makes the career difficult to place in baseball memory. Most players who reach the majors at 19 are still treated as young at 27. For a pitcher with 109 victories, 27 should have been the center of the story, the point when experience and physical ability finally came together. For Gullett, it was the end. The Hall of Fame career Sparky Anderson envisioned would have required years of accumulation that never came. Gullett's 18.2 career wins above replacement and other Hall of Fame measures fall far short of the standards established by durable, long-serving starters. His 109 victories could not become 200 or 250. His 921 strikeouts could not climb into the thousands. The shoulder left those totals fixed before he reached 28. Yet the brevity can obscure just how much he had already fit inside those numbers. Across 9 seasons, Gullett went 109-50.
His .686 career winning percentage remains among the strongest in Major League history. He posted a 3.11 ERA and allowed fewer than 8 hits per 9 innings. He appeared on 6 teams that reached the World Series: Cincinnati in 1970, 1972, 1975, and 1976, then New York in 1977 and 1978. The last of those requires care. Gullett was part of the 1978 Yankees, but his injury kept him off the World Series roster. His 3 championships as an active World Series player came with the 1975 and 1976 Reds and the 1977 Yankees. Even with that distinction, the concentration is remarkable. 6 pennant-winning teams in 9 seasons, 3 championships in 3 consecutive years, a World Series ERA of 1.35 as a teenage rookie, a complete postseason game in which he also homered, 91 victories before his 25th birthday. The career lacked length. It did not lack consequence. Baseball did not disappear from Gullett's life when his major league arm gave out. In 1989, more than a decade after his final Yankees appearance, he played for the St. Lucie Legends of the Senior Professional Baseball Association. It was a brief return to competition, not a restoration of the future that had been projected for him. His more lasting return came in Cincinnati. In 1993, Gullett rejoined the Reds as their pitching coach. The young left-hander, who had once needed almost no minor league apprenticeship, was now responsible for guiding other pitchers through the adjustments, workloads, recoveries, and uncertainties of a major league season. He remained in the job until he was fired during the 2005 season. 12 years as Cincinnati's pitching coach lasted longer than his entire major league playing career. That second tenure changed the proportions of his relationship with the Reds. Fans who remembered the Big Red Machine knew him as the young pitcher who had grown up beside a dynasty. A later generation saw him in the dugout, older now, working with arms whose careers carried their own unknown limits. In 2002, the Reds inducted Gullett into the franchise's Hall of Fame. It was a fitting recognition because Cincinnati had seen the full shape of his baseball life. The city saw him arrive at 19. It watched him grow from bullpen prodigy into championship starter. It lost him to the Yankees at the beginning of free agency, then welcomed him back as a coach more than 15 years after his last major league pitch. Kentucky remained part of that life as well. During the 1970s and 1980s, Gullett farmed in his hometown of Lynn, growing tobacco as his primary crop. The contrast was distinctively his: World Series baseball in Cincinnati and New York, then work on the land in Greenup County. His later years also carried serious health problems. Gullett had been a cigarette smoker. He suffered a heart attack in 1986 and another in 1990. In June 1990, he underwent triple bypass surgery. He lived for more than 3 decades after that operation. Don Gullett died at Riverside Methodist Hospital in Columbus, Ohio, on February 14, 2024. He was 73. The cause was reported as heart issues and other natural causes. By then, the numbers that once appeared to be the beginning of a Hall of Fame resume had long since become final. There would be no lost season recovered, no late career reinvention, no chance for the totals to catch up with the pace of his youth. So the central question has a clear answer. Don Gullett did not drift away from the future baseball expected of him. He did not gradually lose his effectiveness or spend years trying to recover a level he could no longer reach. A double tear in his rotator cuff ended the accumulation almost at once. That injury explains why the Cooperstown projection was never fulfilled. It should not be allowed to erase the career that made such a projection reasonable.
Gullett reached the majors 1 year after high school. At 19, he helped an injured pitching staff survive a World Series. He recovered from hepatitis, developed into one of the National League's leading starters, and became a decisive October performer for the Big Red Machine. He won consecutive championships in Cincinnati, moved to the team the Reds had just swept, and won again in New York. Then the shoulder stopped everything at 27.
For those who saw him, perhaps the memory remains tied to Riverfront Stadium, the red seats, the artificial turf, the compact motion of a left-hander working for a team crowded with famous names. For others, it may be the oddity of seeing the same pitcher linked to Aaron's 660th home run and Mays' last, or the sight of him driving a postseason home run of his own. And for the people closest to where the story began, the memory has a physical place. On the courthouse lawn in Greenup County, Kentucky, there is a monument to Don Gullett. It stands near the communities where he grew up, attended McKell High School, and became an all-state athlete in 3 sports before the rest of baseball caught up with what the county already knew. Its inscription does not mention the rotator cuff. It does not calculate the victories he might have earned, or the seasons that went unwritten. It does not need to settle a Hall of Fame argument. It simply says, "This is Don Gullett country." The Major League career lasted 9 seasons. The claim of home lasted a lifetime.